Great Britain has probably influenced and produced more designers and more creative people all over the world. We've changed the world by producing the most creative people on the planet.
Stuart Trevor, founder of AllSaints, launched Stuart Trevor in 2023, redefining sustainability by creating fashion from waste without new production.
I ended up at Nottingham Trent Poly and I won Smirnoff Fashion Award. Paul Smith offered me a job. David Rees called the college 14 times and I was told I had to go and meet him. We need to fuck fast fashion. We need to stop these fast fashion brands that are polluting.
Our planet Earth is a remarkable and exceptional wonder. Yet the way we humans live on Earth has caused the environment and climate to change, and not for the better. The fashion industry alone contributes 10% to greenhouse gases, contributing to the climate crisis we're all facing. It's the third largest polluter. If you're wearing new clothes, you are part of the problem. So one of the solutions is to not buy new clothes, potentially walk around naked. But there is another way. If we wore the same clothes, we wore yesterday, again and again, every day for the rest of our lives, would actually help cool the planet down. But the problem is, people wouldn't be seen dead in the same item twice. And that mindset challenge is the problem the fashion industry has. So imagine a world where a fashion utopia, where you have 10 trousers, 10 blouses, 10 dresses, and that's it for the rest of your life. And every time you want to freshen your style, you get it reworked. You get it restitched, different color, probably swap it with your family and friends, but you never have to buy another item of clothing again. Could you imagine a life where there's one sheet of fabric that you're just wearing for the rest of your life? Now, it sounds impossible, but what the absolute honor here today is here with fashion royalty Stuart Trevor, who I believe has that exact model of bringing alive clothes that are supposed to be dead, but bringing new life into them. So today we're going to explore and delve deeper into the world according to Stuart Trevor. Now, we've all heard of Frankenstein. So if I said Frankenstein to you, Tina, what would you think of? What's the first thing that comes to you? Something that came back to life after being electrocuted. But what you do remember is the monster. You just described the actual monster. Now, Frankenstein was actually the Professor Frankenstein, that created the monster. But the monster didn't really have a name for his own. He was known, I don't know, probably as Bob. But he didn't have his own name. Today, we have the mad Professor Stuart Trevor with us in the fashion space, who actually has created a monster, his brand. Now, today, what I want to do is explore two celestial bodies. Stuart Trevor, the man, the mad fashionista, and Stuart Trevor, the monster, on a mission to cool the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Stuart Trevor.
Thank you.
So, out to the audience, who do you want to meet first? The man or the monster? That's a surprise. I thought everyone's here to see the man.
No, they want to see the monster. That's fine, no?
Yeah, that's fine. But you know what? I'm gonna start with the man. The reason being because the monster is around us.
Yeah.
If you can see, we've redecorated, we've reworked the room. The monster is amongst us. But let's take it. I want you to take us back. Because I like Frankenstein. Frankenstein, the professor, he injected all his muse, his creativity, his ambition, his genius, his stories into the monster. Now, I kind of parallel that with what you've done in what I know of you, of bringing to life and bringing all your stories and plowing it into Stuart Trevor, the brand. Now, when I visited your studio, one thing that jumped out at me was I saw David Bowie here and there. In The Lightning, I saw David Bowie on Stitches, and I know the music icon, he's been dead. His death anniversary was very recent. So can you take us back to a David Bowie concert and why that was important to you?
It's not mine. Is that yours?
No, it's not.
Oh. Sorry, yeah. So, yeah, David Bowie. I heard David Bowie when I was about 8 years old. And I remember it really clearly because it was life-changing for me. I heard this music, I could hear these lyrics, and it was in my Auntie Joyce's house in Broughty Ferry in Dundee, and I just stopped dead in my tracks, and I could hear these, and the music and the change of pitch and the tone and the words, and I remember going over to this little teak sort of sideboard stereogram and listening with my ear to the speaker, and I always laugh. My family there's a kind of in family joke about this little boy turns around to his mum and says, "Mum, who's David Bowie?" And that little Scottish boy, and she was like, "Oh, we can watch Top of the Pops tonight when we go home, and you'll see who he is," because of course back then we didn't have the internet, we didn't have access to immediate sort of library of things like that. So I watched David Bowie on Top of the Pops, and I was transfixed as this guy in this boiler suit with red boots, and I remember being obsessed with these red boots. I remember really clearly because it's been a family joke all my life because I drove my mum insane about getting me a pair of red boots. I just bought a pair.
Ooh,
actually,
there's the red
year.
boots.
I bought these in Florence in Italy. They're handmade in a little atelier just outside Florence. They've been garment dyed red, but I just loved them. And it brought me back to my childhood when I saw them. And I drove my mum insane about these red boots, and she bought me a pair. We had no money. We come from a very humble background, single parent, 4 kids, no money. Somehow she managed to get some money together and buy me these red boots. And I know this again because the family teased me all my life because I polished those boots every night and slept with them under my pillow. I was so obsessed. I wanted to be David Bowie. And then as I grew up and he developed different characters and came out with different personas, it always amazed me that one man could be to live so many different lives. And here we are 30 years later. It's actually 45 years later. So old. He ended up being not just me, so many other artistic, creative people were inspired by David Bowie. I watched something the other day, John Lydon from the Sex Pistols. They used to play some of the tracks before. He recently did a tour and he played some of the tracks that inspired him to start a band called the Sex Pistols, which were 4 kids that knew nothing about music. They were more into chaos than music. But that changed the world, and they were inspired by David Bowie. And of course the Sex Pistols then, there's all these legends about how the Smiths and Joy Division, New Order, so many bands that went to see the Sex Pistols decided, wow, you don't have to be an incredible musician. Anyone can do this. And they went off and they formed bands like the Smiths and the Cure, and so he was an incredibly thought-provoking, intelligent, inspirational human being, and I've been obsessed with him since I was 8 years old, and I still, to this day, I think he's the only artist that I play his music on a regular basis and never grow bored of it. And some of the things, one of my favorite tunes is one of the, it's not one of the most famous, but there's a song called Changes, and then the lyrics in it are I can't remember. I might forget them, but because I don't rehearse any of this when I come and do these talks. And these children that you spit upon as you try and change their world, they're immune to your, is it consternation? And they're quite aware of what they're going through. And it's so relevant to what governments and huge corporations have thrown upon our lives in the last 20 years. It's just got worse and worse, hasn't it? I mean, I don't know. And social media hasn't helped. We're all being brainwashed into believing that we don't have enough and that we need to buy more. And you know, you see buses going by with, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful photograph of a really great looking model wearing a lovely, what looks like a really beautiful, big, fluffy, white ribbed turtleneck sweater. And it says H&M, £10. And people go, fuck me, oh, £10, that looks amazing. What they don't realise is it's made out of acrylic. You go and buy it. When you're in there, they probably had them made, knitted in Burma by, you know, factories that have, you know, the worst human rights conditions in the world. And they're making it out of plastic. I mean, acrylic and polyester is plastic. And plastic, as everybody knows, I mean, you would never wear plastic knickers. I mean, even, you know, every woman, you know, okay, women's knickers, they come in nylon, lace and all this sort of stuff, but the gusset is made out of cotton. There's a reason for that, is there's no way on earth, I mean, you know, there's no one here in that has plastic, you know, polyester underpants. I mean, you none of us would have any children. And your body, your skin is the largest organ on your body, and yet these billion-dollar corporations are supplying us, or telling us, they're supplying us with 90% of what they make is made from plastic. So, you know, even shirts that are made from polycotton, they came up with this in the 70s and 80s, and they're like non-iron. You don't have to iron it. It's, you know, it's not 100% cotton. It's got polyester in it, and you can just bung it in the washing machine and tumble dry it, and you can put it, you don't have to, you know, because it's got polyester in it. All these, even Rudy that's working with me on tech said to me, I don't understand what the problem is. The problem is the minute that you mix cotton with polyester, or wool with polyester and nylon, or 10% elastane, like, you know, these fabrics are not, you can't recycle them because they can't separate the polyester from the cotton, or the nylon from the wool. So it all ends up going into landfill. And, you know, we know, I mean, when I started on this journey about 3 years ago, I prepared a deck with Mike Blakely here, and we pulled out some statistics, and one of them was every 7 minutes there's a pile of clothes the height of Mount Everest going into landfill. It's probably every 7 seconds now, 3 years later, because it's just getting worse and worse. But my daughter, when I showed her these things, she went, Dad, you can't write that. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, you can't lie. I said, I'm not a lie. She went, don't be stupid, Dad. You can't, this is ridiculous. I'm like, sure, what's ridiculous? She's like, every 7 minutes, a pile of clothes the height of Mount Everest. I mean, that's ridiculous, Dad. If that was true, there's no kid on the planet that would buy from Primark or H&M or Zara or you know. And I'm like, darling, hold on a second. And I showed her where it comes from, these facts. She's like, fucking hell, what are we going to do? I said, well, we're going to start a clothing brand that doesn't produce any clothes.
And just what you said there, what you've said there is absolutely, this is what I wanted you to do, is just tell us the frustrations, the pains that you have around the world. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you're creating a brand, it's more than just the textiles, it's the stories behind it, it's the mission. And as you can see from Stuart, you're so passionate about this mission of cooling the planet down, or fighting against the world, the mess that's made with textiles. And this is what this new brand Stuart Trevor is representing, the monster. Yeah. But before I've got so many questions about the monster, but before we get there, I want, if you could take us back to your early days as a fashion designer, working your way up. Who were the key icons that nudged you along the way, set you on that trajectory until you got here?
Okay, so when I was a kid at school, I excelled at arts, everything, art lessons, craft design technology, you know, woodwork, metalwork, all that sort of stuff, making ashtrays out of old vinyl records and heating them, and you know, all these sort of, you know, I was obsessed with that. I managed. My mother married my stepfather. We moved down to London when I was 11, and I went to a really great grammar school for boys, and they had a great art department. I had a really, really great teacher there who used to run clubs in the afternoon, and I would be in there from 3:30 till 8 o'clock every single night, doing, you know, life drawing on a Monday, printmaking on a Tuesday, life drawing on a Wednesday, oil painting on a Thursday, and that was what I was in. My whole life was just interested, obsessed with creating things. I had no idea, what I wanted to do, and I didn't know that you could do fashion as a career. There were no shops like there are now. I remember discovering the King's Road when I was about 13 and wandering down the King's Road, and that was just amazing. But there were little independent boutiques that had tiny little brands, designers that were creating really interesting sort of things. And the King's Road was the coolest street in the world in the late 70s and early 80s, and all the way through until the 90s sort of thing. But you know, when I went to the careers advisor, they looked at me and said, "Oh, you know, you're going to have to be an architect," because that's the only job that they could think of, that someone that was, you know, a talented creative. That's the only thing that they thought. You know, it's a bit. I mean, it doesn't get any better now. If you look at our current educational system, it's all about maths and physics. It's still about, you know, English, maths and physics and chemistry and things like that. It's ridiculous when you consider that Great Britain has probably influenced and produced more designers and more creative people all over the world. The main designers behind Apple, largest tech company in the world, are British. We invented the telephone, we invented the TV, we invented computers, everything. And these are creative people. So, you know, when you get tech people and, you know, accountants that say, oh, you know, we should be doing more, we should be teaching more maths, and Rishi Sunak, and, you know, more maths, you know, what a load of fucking bollocks. There are more, we've changed the world by, you know, producing the most creative people on the planet. And we need to, I believe we need to change our educational system. And
who were the creative people in your life that kind of helped shape
I have a
you?
tendency to waffle on about something nothing to do with the question, so forgive me.
I'll bring you back. I'll bring you back.
So I ended up leaving school. I went to college. I discovered that you could do fashion. I did incredibly well with it, but I really took on board. I went to evening school, and I learned to become a tailor with the Royal Huntsman's tailoring course. I did a City and Guilds tailoring course, and I ended up at Nottingham Trent Poly, and I won Smirnoff Fashion Award. That was presented. It was at the Royal Albert Hall, presented by Vivienne Westwood. I won a Menswear Day Award. I was a finalist at a Paul Smith Mont Blanc competition. Paul Smith offered me a job. David Rees called the college 14 times, and I was told I had to go and meet him. And he basically took me to Florence in Italy, which is where I'm going tomorrow, actually, to the world's #1 menswear fair. And while I was there, the designers back then, the #1 menswear designer in the world was Jean-Paul Gaultier. He used to do all the most incredible sort of tailoring and casual wear. And David Rees bought me a £790 blazer, bright red blazer, in order to basically tell Paul Smith to fuck off. If I buy you this blazer, will you tell him to fuck off? Yeah. And I was like, oh,
Were you working with Paul Smith at the time?
I'd done a competition. He'd offered me an internship over the summer, and I was going to go and do that. This was at Nottingham Trent. The one reason I went to Nottingham is that's where Paul Smith is, and I wanted to meet him, and I wanted to work for him. And but David Rees basically bought. It's the equivalent of a £10,000 jacket or something. But I think he got his money's worth because he sold the company for 100 million back 3 years ago.
These names are like, we know them as brands on the high street, but these are people you've actually worked with. What was it like working with a Paul Smith or a David Rees?
He's lovely. I actually went to Pitti Uomo in Florence last year, and Paul Smith was doing, every year it's twice a year, they take a designer from one of the main designers, and they give them a sort of like a platform, a stage, and they celebrate their life's work. Maybe one day I might get an exhibition like that, myself. But he had one in a huge villa on the River Arno. It was really beautiful. All the models were there, all the cameras were there. There's so many press, and they were interviewing him. And I walked in, and he turned around and he looked at me and he waved and he said, well, wait. And he was talking to a Japanese TV company who were filming him. And then he cut short the interview and he walked over to me and he said, "Hello, Stuart, how you doing?" And I couldn't believe it. I haven't seen him in 25 years or something. But and that's part of the magic of Paul Smith as a human being. He's actually a very, very nice person. And he has this sort of weird talent of remembering people's names and faces. I mean, I think it might have something to do with the fact that because I turned him down and went off and ended up founding AllSaints, which is now like a £400 million company, whereas Paul Smith is a £150 million company and not doing very well. But maybe it's something to do with that as well. But I don't think it is. Other people have told me that he remembers their names and he comes up and But I don't know whether or not there could be a bit of him thinking, I wish I'd taken that. I wish I'd offered him money, because the problem with Paul Smith is he was too tight. He wouldn't offer me any money, whereas David Rees offered to pay me. And I had no money, so. Are
they the same? Is it David Rees who set you on the way to AllSaints?
So I did 10 years at Rees. When I joined it, the company was insolvent. It was going through administration with KPMG. I looked at the business myself. I was 18, 19 years old. I looked at the business. It was a multi-brand retailer. They used to buy from Armani and Stone Island and Liberto denim brands, and and the markup wasn't enough. And I was like, why are we even buying these? Why don't we do our own? I could do jeans. I could do bomber jackets. I could do knitwear, shirts, ties, socks, T-shirts, knitwear, everything. So I set about doing that, and basically, when I joined the company, it was insolvent. When I left in 1994 to set up AllSaints, it was 50 million turnover. So, and the reason I left is I thought, God, if I can do this for David Rees, I've got to do this for myself. I mean, when I look back on it now, I'm thinking, how on earth I had the balls to give up what was, back in those days, a 60 grand a year job, shares in a business, all the perks, and no worry, no, I just had to turn up and come up with the winners. I didn't have to worry about everything else.
But what was that? What was that suddenly switched, that you wanted to become more entrepreneurial, I'd say?
I mean, it all sounds like as if it was brilliant working for David Rees. He was a great guy. He gave me a great opportunity, but we were arguing all the time because he is a very, very classic gentleman that wears a navy blazer with gold buttons, a white Oxford button down with a silk tie, striped tie, and a pair of chinos and a pair of Basswegian loafers. Very, very preppy. I mean, he knew about beautiful quality fabrics, and he knew about, beautifully made garments, but he had a very, very traditional sort of, funky, preppy, collegiate sort of blazer and chino and roll neck sweater sort of style. But he knew he couldn't understand where I came up with these stupid ideas like adding an embroidery or patches or sequins or just cropping things or making like bomber jackets.
So it was more like stifling a creativity. But
yeah,
you had to be.
I mean, I used to have to argue with him, and then the things he would allow me to do bits, and they would deliver to the stores, and they'd sell out in one day, and the staff would be going, "Oh, these are amazing." David would go, "Yeah, I designed that last week." He would take the credit for it all, so I wanted to do. I just thought, listen, we've got how many lives do we have? You have one go at this on planet Earth, and I just wanted to do. I just thought, you know what? It's a bit like being in a. I always equate it back to music, and artists that were in bands and they go off and they do their own thing. Like George Michael was in Wham, and he went off and did George Michael or whatever. If he hadn't done it, if he'd just carried on as Wham, then we wouldn't have had everything that George Michael did or whatever. Or same with David Bowie. If he'd have just stuck with David Bowie and the Spiders from Mars, we wouldn't have had all the other, the Thin White Duke and everything else as well. The Serious Moonlight Tour and Let's Dance and all that. He reinvented himself. So I wanted to reinvent myself and do something. What
were the main values and stories that you carried into AllSaints when you started it off?
So when I started, the number one word was longevity. I wanted to create garments that people would wear for life. So I worked with the best fabric mills in the world, and I taught factories how to make garments to the very highest standards, because I didn't want to have garments that people would buy and then wear a couple of years and then chuck them. I wanted people to own these garments for life. And so also when I designed them, I never wanted them to be, we wouldn't do something really crazy. I mean, the people they used to say to me, "Where did you get the idea for AllSaints?" God, it was so amazing, so cool. It's a fucking biker jacket. And all I did was make it and wash it and, maybe change the zips to black or, matte black and the press studs to matte black and, and finish the leather with a wax and an oil or whatever. And, but they're generally quite classic garments. But I remember actually when I first did that biker jacket, people said to me, "We don't get any bikers in our shops." I'm not aiming at people that own a motorbike. I think these look really cool, and anyone can wear them. And people are like, "Don't be stupid. Who's going to, the next thing we sold 10,000 biker jackets in 1 year. It was, I don't know. In my career, there was never any real. I never followed any trends. I never thought nobody said, I never read a book or went to any of these fabric fairs. There's big fabric fairs where fabric mills try and tell you what the big look for next year is. I never followed any of that. I used to go to flea markets like Portobello Road or Clignancourt in Paris, and I'd walk in and I'd find something just by the chance, and I found a biker jacket one year, and I thought, God, this looks great. And also there was a funny story behind that. Elton John did a song called "I Guess That's Why They Call It the Blues," and there was in that song there's a really beautiful girl with a big full skirt, and she fell in love with this sort of teddy boy who had a frock coat, which I used to love. And then he got called up for national service, and then there's another kid turned up on a motorbike with a biker jacket on, and the jeans with the red selvage and all that, and she fell in love with him or whatever. And I remember thinking, a biker jacket's a lot cooler than a frock coat, isn't it? So that's where the idea of the biker jacket comes. He just looked fucking cool. Yeah. So I wanted to look like that, and I wanted to get the best looking girl.
That's such a challenge to be able to have the confidence or the balls, as you say, to come up with see something you like, have something in your mind and go, that's it, the rest of the world will want to wear this. Because nowadays I find entrepreneurs or designers shackled to market research. So let me just study theoretically how is it going to work, and then let me design it to suit what the customer wants. But you did it the other way around.
I never did any of that. I was just made me think, actually, when I was talking about that, because I read this thing the other day. There's a guy called Richard Hell, who was one of the founders of punk. He was in a band called Television. And there's a famous quote for him was, rock and roll was invented so that young girls would pay to chase guys, which is kind of funny, isn't it? But that whole thing is rock and roll. Yeah, it was all about the fact that, if you, because, at the end of the day, Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood in the late 70s, they had a shop on the King's Road, and they also changed it into several different, they had Let It Rock, and then they had Sex, and that was the shop that the Sex Pistols, Malcolm McLaren was the manager of the Sex Pistols, and they were all there, and Vivienne West was the designer. And I remember thinking years ago, Sex, God, it's a bit, I don't know, is it a bit tacky? And I thought, fuck it, why do we think it's tacky? At the end of the day, even our mum and dad had sex. I mean, it's been going on since the beginning of time. That's the reason that we're all here. Why is there all these weird sort of...
is that just being British, though?
I don't think it's British, isn't it? The Americans are worse, aren't they? They're full of evangelicals, and yet there's more porn in America than anywhere else. But sex, at the end of the day, is a beautiful thing, isn't it? And clothing... I mean, you talking about clothing, it's a little bit of an oxymoron when I'm like, what about a clothing brand that doesn't produce any clothes? I kind of feel a little bit like, what am I doing? I now have a clothing brand. We sold last year over 1,000 garments, which is unbelievable for me. I'm kind of like blown away by it. We only just got the analytics last week. But I feel a little bit.
He didn't manufacture any of these clothes.
No,
that's the magic with this, and we'll go into the monster.
That's the thing that because it worries me. I'm like, fucking hell, we've sold 1,000 pieces. I was trying to set up. I was trying to encourage people: don't buy anything. Stop buying clothes. Like, just swap. Go in your mum's wardrobe. That's why I go to my kids, and my kids will not buy anything unless it's vintage or secondhand, but they love what I'm doing because they love the fact that I've taken vintage pieces and I play around with it and I make it more interesting, because that's the most important thing, is that all the Greta Thunbergs and that how dare you and all that, you shouldn't be angry. What we need to do is make it fun. So we take a really classic blazer and we cut a window out of it and we put this sort of beaded fabric in it, and we call it the party back, because it's kind of like, from the front it looks like a classic blazer, and then you turn around.
Let's go into the monster, which is the brand. There's a couple more questions I've got, but while you're talking about it, I'd love if a couple of people could try on what it feels like to wear a Stuart Trevor.
Yeah.
Can I get a couple of models? Oh, someone's volunteering. And
oh yeah, what does that T-shirt say? And that's kind of funny.
Yeah, say it nice and loud. What does the T-shirt say?
Well, it's basically F-U-C-K fast fashion, isn't it?
Yeah, fuck fast fashion. And it's kind of like, I wanted to do, I was a little, listen, I'm not, I do swear a little bit, slightly potty mouth, but I am aware that it can be offensive to people. So but I did think, there's no clearer message that we need to get across. We need to fuck fast fashion. Yeah. We need to stop these fast fashion brands that are polluting our worlds, brainwashing everyone, not just our children, all of us, into believing that we don't have enough. So I came up with this, but I wanted it to be quite subtle. So I actually photographed a little badge that I'd had printed on denim, and I did this on my phone in a hotel in Brighton.
Mobile.
I did it on my phone in a hotel in Brighton, and I just wrote the words "fuck fast fashion" over a photograph of a badge, and I sent it to my printers, and I came back on the Monday, and he printed it on a T-shirt, and I was like, and there you go. I had Caroline Rush, who's CBE, who was the CEO of the British Fashion Council, came to see me with her team to film a documentary in my studios, and I showed her it, and I thought a bit posh, and there's a couple of other, and they went, I love that. And I'm like, would you wear that? And they're, absolutely. And I was like, really? And they absolutely love it. We're going to write a whole thing about it. This is perfect. Fuck fast fashion.
There you
because
go.
we have to. We got to. The message is clear. We can't carry on like this. You know, every 7 minutes there's a every 7 seconds there's a bin. What's it called? A refuse truck dumping clothes into landfill. And we've just been approached by the Ghanaian government. We're going to go down there and. We're going to be working with, like, you know, fashion colleges there and working with... They told me they've got 400 tons of stuff there they don't know what to do with. And 400 tons. That's like, you could fill 10 Wembley stadiums, like, you know, up to the ceiling full of clothes.
And that's...
Biodegrade.
And it won't, and most of it's made out of polyester. Because all fast fashion and sportswear companies, that's another thing as well. I went to Chamonix in France where the glaciers are, and I gave a talk, stood on a glacier, and I had Puma there, and Adidas, and On, and Nike. And I said to them, the first one of you that joins me on a mission to bring natural fibers into sportswear. Because, you know, this whole thing where they go, you know, polyester wicks the sweat away, it's absolute bollocks. It doesn't wick the sweat away. It just doesn't absorb any sweat because it's plastic. So, you know, and if you look at when the Euros were on, the footballers are all running around with, like, plasters over their nipples because they all get, you know, jogger's nipple from wearing plastic because we're allergic to plastic. We shouldn't be wearing it.
It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
There's only one reason why they make things out of polyester. All of them, all the fast fashion brands and all of the sportswear companies. It's not because it wicks the sweat away, and it's not because it doesn't, you know, it's easier to. It's because it's cheap. Yeah. That's the only reason.
Amanda, could you come up? I'm going to ask you to actually try something.
Oh yeah, you can all try things on.
Okay, go for it.
My daughter's training to be a midwife, and she was wondering why she kept getting all these rashes on her legs.
Oh, no.
And I said, it's got to be those polyester trousers. And I'm going to tell her now, Stuart, from you. I said, you've got to tell the hospital that you cannot wear them. She wore a pair of leggings underneath literally 2 days ago. No problem. Yeah. So I videoed you talking about polyester, and I would tell my daughter.
Excellent. There you go. Come and try something on. What?
I love it, yeah. Where did you get that from?
This is Stradivarius.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
What should we...
Copy of an AllSaints one in there.
What should we put Amanda in?
Why don't you try that
Oh, yes, please.
Pico? This is a really... so we started off making... we started off taking Vietnam War era shirts. Toby, pass me that shirt there. So we started taking these Vietnam War era shirts because we had tons of them. I had a warehouse that had thousands of these vintage military sort of shirts. And I thought, what are we going to do with them? And then I found rolls of this sort of like sequin fabric that was, dead stock. And so I thought, do you know what I'm going to do is cut the back out and just... So, and it's kind of funny because I wore this virtually every time I wear it. I'm walking through London fields and you're walking towards people and they come in towards you. And then when you are walking away from them, they turn around, they see you, and they're like, people running up going, oh my God, that is the most amazing, because there's a reveal. There's this thing where you see this guy walking towards you. Okay, he's wearing a vintage army shirt, which is quite cool. But then when you walks by and you're like, wow, that is amazing. It is a wow. Factor. And it's, so it's kind of, you could try that on, yeah. So then somebody said, why don't you do them instead of khaki, why don't you do it in black? So I went to a couple of charity shops and I bought a couple of denim shirts and things like that. And I did it on black, and people were like, what? And then we did events. The last Thursday and Friday, or the first Thursday and Friday of every month, the last Friday of every Thursday, Friday of every month, and we have events in our studio. We have a really amazing, beautiful old Victorian tea warehouse in Hoxton, and you can come along and try goods on and have a drink and have fun, and we have bands playing, and we want to have a really, really cool old Victorian atypical Shoreditch loft. Like, they're very lucky. I bought it 20 years ago, and it's super cool. I always wanted it to be like Andy Warhol's factory, but without the heroin. But so we want artists to come and hang out. We want bands to hang out. So we've ended up with our own in-house artist that's there nearly every day painting. We came up with this thing. He was doing these cats who smoke. We changed it into cats who care, because we are cats who care about the planet. The whole cat thing is like a David Bowie sort of, we're the cool
There
cats.
he is again. That story comes into it.
And it kind of worked, and it became really, really funny and really cool, because we changed cats who smoke, because I don't like smoking because it's really bad for you. It's not like it's not like I'm an angel or whatever, but I am a saint.
All Saint. It's All Saint.
The saint of all saints. But so I thought, I don't like smoking, but then I thought, actually, I don't mind cats who smoke. I think that's all right, and I don't mind dogs who play poker either. But then we changed it to cats who care, because we care about the planet. And then we thought it's really funny, actually, because cats don't give a fuck, do they? They don't care about anything. It's an oxymoron. But anyway,
Would you like me to model it?
yeah, do a little bit of up and down.
If you can walk us through what Amanda's wearing here.
So this is I think that's an Austrian army military. It's a vintage military shirt. The reason somebody asked me, my partner, my girlfriend said to me, Stu, you've got so much vintage military all the time. People are going to think that that you like war. And I'm like, no, they're not. They're not, and they're like, what? And she's like, well, why are you so obsessed with vintage military? Well, I got to tell you, it's really, really well made. Actually, if you were to try and make a shirt in that quality of fabric with that quality of make, it would probably cost more than what it costs for me to buy it. And it's already sitting there. And then someone, so I've had, when I launched this about a year and a half ago, I had some friends of mine, the ex-CEO of Diesel, the ex-retail director of Ted Baker, ran that, the other £300 million company. And they came to me and they went, I love what you're doing, but where are you going to get the stock? And I'm like, are you fucking crazy? The last thing I have to worry about is where I'm going to get the stock. There's probably 1 million of these shirts.
How old is this shirt then?
This shirt's probably 30 years old.
30 years.
But it doesn't look it. It's probably never been worn.
It's a timeless streetwear.
It is, yeah.
Utility, isn't it?
Yeah, and
timeless.
but it's really well made. And then and they also said, yeah, but surely that's going to run out. Well, yeah, I might not be able to get that exact one, but there'll be another version. But you know that the American military alone, American government spend $5 billion a year on clothing every year since
your stock
1945.
there for the rest of your life.
I mean, there's more stock on this planet. We could go 8 to 10 generations without making another garment. And so
we should put that in the deck, because one of the questions investors have is, this is not scalable. We have to manufacture.
Oh, mate, it's...
But here we've got more stock that we need.
That's the whole point of it, to upcycle, recycle, rework, reimagine, circular economy, and so it goes again. It's just going to keep going.
If you look at...
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's 100% right. I mean, and that's why... So what we've done as well... No, you could try...
We've got models up here, so we get them to try.
Try that one
Do I
on.
really have to give this back, Stuart?
Have you got your checkbook?
How much does this retail for, Stuart?
So
Let's talk money, Trevor.
we put... I think we put them at 198. Is that right? It depends. It depends on how rare the garment is. Sometimes we put them out at 150, but it is an online retail business. That Stuart Trevor, it's available at stuarttrevor.com. We don't really sell it anywhere else. We sell it in our studio, but and we put it out at 198. But the reason we put it out at that price is that when you run an online business, we were talking about this earlier. We will never ever go down this Black Friday route. We will never go down the traditional January sale or end of summer sale. I will never do that.
Why is that?
Because it's... before I started doing this, one of the reasons why we ended up doing this is the Sunday Times rang me and said, "What's this going on with like this non-stop discounting. There's so many retailers like, you know, AllSaints. Every January they do 50% off everything. Why would anybody go and buy a leather jacket for 400 quid in February if they could have got it for 150, 200 in January and all that? It kills your business. It's a bit, I mean, I just don't understand it. How, so...
Though. I honestly thought that you were going to say that would be about £600.
Yeah, well, it could be. I mean, and some people did say to me in the beginning, but the reason All Saints was a huge success is I found a gap in the market where I looked at what designers were charging for, you know, like designers like, I don't know, Galliano or Gaultier or Dior or, you know, Armani or whatever. And I just thought, I mean, there's an area in the market for everyone. You know, designers can go out at whatever price they want. I'm not going to judge them, but me personally, I think that I think 190 quid for a shirt like that looks amazing, and I think that's reasonable.
What size is that, please, Stuart?
I think that's a medium. So it's like a small stroke medium. But yeah, it looked great on you.
Order one,
yeah? Yeah.
And,
sold.
so,
it was lovely. And then we added somebody came to me to one of the events and said, I'm a businesswoman and I need to turn up at the office wearing a suit, but I love your party back shirts with the gold bits. Can you do one on a blazer? So we did one on a blazer, that one, like that one, if you bring that one over. So we took what is basically a classic, this is Richard James Savile Row blazer, and we cut a little window out and we put a little window of the sequins.
Very beautiful.
And it's just really chic. Yeah, try that out.
Stuart, do you remember this one?
I do, yeah. That's you mentioned to me that you brought it along. You came to see me, I think it was the Christmas party a year ago, and you walked in and just you walked straight over to that and picked it up and put it on and just said, I absolutely love this. This is made out of 2 separate vintage Macs. And
That is an aesthetic.
It completely changes the aesthetic, doesn't it?
And I've been trying it. I've been walking the streets of Mayfair, seeing what people think. Do they look at me as, oh my God, this is a weirdo? But people love it.
No, it's
they
beautiful.
love it, and it represents. And the reason I went, as soon as Stuart Trevor launched the studio, I went in knowing, grab the first model, because when the guy dies, it's going to be worth quite a bit.
well, the funny thing that you should say that, because every garment that we produce has a little label on there that we zigzag stitch it in red. And this is a tailor's label that they use in film studios. So I used to go, I mean, part of the reason why I'm doing what I do is because when I was at Reese as a young boy, 18 years old, I realized that all the best designers in the world, they don't sit in a room and draw pictures and come up with something totally new. They go to vintage shops and flea markets, and they go to film studios, costumiers like Angels and Bermans, and they borrow clothes that were in films. And I borrowed a frock coat that Marlon Brando wore in Mutiny on the Bounty, and inside the garment it had a little white label and it said Paramount Studios, and it said lot number, which is the lot where they were filming, and it said model and it had Marlon Brando written on it, and it had a date on it, which was the 3rd of September 1952 or something like that. And it was and it had the size on it, and it had something about this garment remains the property of Paramount Studio or whatever. And then I thought, well, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to make one. And mine says Stuart Trevor. It has a date. It has a model. And we were going to call it like, you know, the model would be Party Back or whatever shirt. But then we realised that wouldn't it be really nice to personalise it? So if you bought it, then you're the model. So I write your name on it.
I've got my
name
name on it.
there.
Yeah, there it is.
And my daughter came up with the idea as well. She said, God, Dad,
model.
if Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren had signed and dated and numbered the garments that they first ever made in the late 70s when they came up with seditionaries and sex, the punk, the concept that founded punk. I mean, those garments, those T-shirts are worth £10,000 as it is. If they'd have signed and dated them, they'd be worth £1 million.
That's exactly why I bought this.
That's going to be on the Antiques Roadshow.
Probably in 30, 40 years' time, when I'm no longer here, or whatever.
Well, I'm not going to be longer here either. Anyway, thank you, our models. Thank you. I'll continue.
Is it unisex? Or
It is, yeah.
I was going to say, because
We're non-gender, is it non-binary?
It looks really good on you.
Non-gender, transgender. No, it's kind of, that is so, I mean, that is a men's blazer. It's navy, dark navy, yeah, it's really beautiful. It actually looks absolutely stunning on you. And the funny thing about this as well, it is a Richard James Savile Row. I think it's off the peg, but it is really beautiful, made from a really beautiful Super 100s Barberis Canonica Biella fabric from the northern mountains of Italy. Where I got these from is I encourage everybody, so everyone that's here tonight, I'm sure a lot of you are business people. You're going to have suits in your wardrobe that you haven't worn in 10 years. You know, you may have put on a bit of weight, or you don't like it anymore. You've decided you want to wear, I mean, and this is the worst thing of all. This is what main point I wanted to take and answer of one of your questions is, the one thing that we cannot do is we cannot stop people from wanting to buy things. I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, we've all got wardrobe full of clothes, but the dopamine rush that you get from buying something new and trying something new on. I mean, but the idea is, if you buy something that's been around for 20, 30 years and I've customized it and made it more interesting, then at least we can satisfy a customer's need for a dopamine rush. But you can do it whilst it's safe in the knowledge that you're not damaging the planet.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. How do we change that mindset that I got a dopamine rush buying this, but as an environmentalist, I got excited about what you're doing. Now, I'm going to take you down a road that you probably don't want to hear, but everyone wants to. If you don't mind, bear with me.
I don't mind.
Okay, you don't mind? Okay, here we go. A little bit about AllSaints.
Yeah.
Now, it was your baby, but you had to let go of it. Could you take us back to that moment?
I sold it for a load of money. I didn't have to let go of it. I sold it for loads of money. More money than I'd ever thought possible in my life. So, you know, I come from a very humble background. I'm not really interested in money, but I built this brand. I loved it. But also I have severe ADHD. I wake up in the morning and I get very excited about what I have to do that day. But after I've done it again and again and again, I wanted, my typical people ask me all the time, could we film you? I'd love to know what a day in the life of Stuart Trevor. Do you know what I enjoy? I enjoy driving to the factory rather than sitting in the office creating things. Because of the ADHD, I actually quite enjoy the having to do something different every day. And after you've done 10 years, 15, I think I did 17 years. I did 10 years at Reese, and I wanted to do something new. And I went off and I launched AllSaints. And it could have been a disaster. If I'd have stayed at Reese, I would probably be worth 30, 40 million quid and would have had a very, very lovely life, traveling the world without any issues. But I gave all that up because I look at it and I think, why did I do that? You know, but if I hadn't done that, then AllSaints wouldn't exist.
How difficult was it to sell the brand? So other aspiring designers here who are building their brand don't realize that they're injecting their story, their creativity in building this brand, and suddenly it works, and then you let go of this baby.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I called it AllSaints is because I thought that if I ever wanted to sell it, then it doesn't matter because it's not my name.
It's different now.
It's different now because it's my name.
Yeah.
But I'm that fucking old.
I remember meeting...
that when I get to... I'm 58. And so, you know, in 10 years' time, when I'm 68, I mean, maybe if somebody wants to come along and buy my name, I mean, what am I going to do with it? I'm 68. Yeah. I'm probably going to be, you know, riding a motorbike to Japan and having loads of fun or whatever, you know. I'm you know, but it doesn't mean if I could sell it and still keep a part of it, or you know, I have 3 kids. Maybe one of them will finally get off their arse and come in and do some work. You know, I don't know. It's
But what I love about the Stuart Trevor name, this is what it does to me, and I'll open these questions out to everybody else. But just to end it here, the Stuart Trevor name, as an environmentalist, was an environmentalist for 20 years. Worked in Borneo. We built orangutan centres across Borneo. Worked in Africa doing various conservation work. So it was in my blood to look at environmentalism. But when Stuart Trevor came up with this brand, what it did, of course, people were selling vintage clothing and secondhand clothing and charity shops, and you could probably put all this together. The difference was he had the balls, to take your word for it, to put his legacy, his name, his fame against an environmental movement. And that's big. No other fashion designer has that guts to do that. And that I just want to thank you for, from the environmental community, that you would be so bold as to create a monster on a mission.
When I launched this, I was approached by, so I've known lots of people over the world. I did a show about 10 years ago in St. Louis in Missouri, and they contacted me and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. You know, I've been waiting 10 years for you to launch a new brand. We're going to sponsor you to come over, and we're going to do a runway show. St. Louis has a new football club. They've spent 80 million quid on it, and it's a huge success. And they're launching a new strip, and we want you to come over and do this show." And I went, "Yeah, okay, great." I went over there with 4 suitcases. We dressed, I think we had 10 models, and they said to me, "Well, we don't have a budget for any more models." I said, "Ask the football players." Some of these footballer players had like 2 million followers, and they were like, "Oh, I'm not sure about it. I don't think they'll do it." And I went, "Just ask them." And they rang me back the following day and said, "Well, we've got 6 football players, the manager, the coach, the president of the football club. We've got the equivalent of Gary Lineker, the TV pundit for football. We've got the guy who reads the news, breakfast TV, every day. They all want to walk in your runway show." So we went over there and we did it. And I invited all the vintage stores from America that I've known for years and years to come. And quite a few flew in from New York and Los Angeles and Mississippi, and not Mississippi, Minneapolis and things like, you know. And they said to me at the time, they came to see me before the show, and they went, "Yeah, it's all very good, mate. You know, we've been doing the vintage stuff for years, man. We know, this is okay. It's all right. It's just a vintage show." And then they came to me after, went, "Fuck me, man. I cannot believe you completely blew us out the water," because they couldn't believe that every single garment on that runway was pre-loved vintage piece that we had taken and customized, and we did things. I really enjoyed it. I've come up with new ideas all the time. So we just made some pieces last week. So we have a little factory in the East End of London, and they've been making duffel coats for the British Army since 1930. And this was the Montgomery, but I added all these patches on it, and this is made from a traditional British Melton fabric. This is the original fabric and the original factory that made duffel coats for General Montgomery during World War II. And then we've added...
There's the man himself.
There's David Bowie on the back of it, sort of thing. And then we've done, some other ones with peacocks. So it's just a plain... The peacock of there, Toby, stand up and then Toby should model...
Go on, Toby.
Maybe
get your kit off.
Go on, Toby. Take your shirt off. Show him the abs. And this is just it's a traditional. That's a traditional peacoat, and then we've just had. I mean, we are going to make these in this little factory. Someone said to me, the brand was founded on the concept of what about a clothing brand?
Thank you, Toby.
That doesn't produce any clothing, but and then somebody wrote to me and said, "Well, you're a liar." And I said, "What are you talking?" They're like, they sent and they go, "Well, you're lying. You do produce clothes." I said, "I never said I'm not going to produce any clothes. What I said." It was a question, what about a clothing brand that doesn't produce any clothes? But when I was going to these little factories in the East End, and these amazing, this factory's been going since 1930, making duffel coats for World War II. And they're now down to about 10 tailors, and they're really amazing. I will do everything I can to help that business survive.
Amazing.
And it doesn't get much more sustainable than this. I can get hold of dead stock fabric from these fabric mills, send it to them and make 50 of these duffel coats and have them online within 2 weeks. And there's no air freight involved. Basically I go there and pick up a suitcase of 10 jackets on a Monday and bring them to my studio and hang them up, and we get the little patches added on or whatever like that. It doesn't get much more sustainable than that.
Excellent.
So yeah, it's
Well, let's open up some questions. If anyone has some burning questions they'd like to ask.
Yeah.
Firstly, thanks very much. Absolutely fascinating. And as I come from the East End of London as well, I thought that said, fuck East London. I was going to buy it off you. My question is, Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, have you ever met him, ever had a conversation? Because it seems like you share the same philosophy.
Yeah, I did. Patagonia approached me this time last year to do I went to the Cannes Lion Festival of Creativity, and I shared a stage with the guy that runs their, I don't know, I think he's called the creative director or business. Basically he's not a business type guy. He's more like and he works directly with the founder, and the founder had read somewhere online about me and what I'm doing, and said we've got to get hold of this guy. I think the words was we've got to get hold of this kid and all that. He didn't realise I'm only a few years younger than him. Well, actually, he's about 80, so I am still a kid compared to him, I suppose. But yeah, they talked about the fact that he came up with the idea that the garments should be so well made that and you shouldn't ever chuck them away. If there's anything, if the zip breaks or send it back and they'll fix it. But that's what we do as well. If anybody has a problem with anything, we'll repair it as well. But it's still at very early days for us. But that's what we're going to be doing is a repair shop. I forgot to mention so the guy with the Savile Row, he turned up with two. It's a mate of mine because we need to spread more word about the fact that you've all got loads of suits in your wardrobe that you don't wear anymore or whatever. Come and see me, bring them, and I'll give you a credit note and swap. The guy that brought all those, he brought in something like 8 Savile Row suits. He even brought in a cashmere Hermes blazer, a Lanvin blazer. It was ridiculous. I was like looking at it thinking, what am I going to do? He's got about 20 grand's worth of clothes here. And he went, I just want that parka, and can I get one of those shirts for my wife? And I went, what, and then we're square? He went, yeah. I went, you can have that, mate. And he put it on, and he was so excited about it. And he took a photograph of it and sent it to me the next day, and he was so excited about it. But he'd photographed it outside of a convenience store with, like, Labara Mobile and all that crap. And I was like, mate, you got to do a better picture than that. So he put it on Facebook, and there's all these weird sort of things, like there's a thing on Facebook, there's a club called Change My Background, and he put it on Facebook and said, can someone edit out the background rather than take another photograph? He just thought it'd be good. He put it went viral. It went all over the world. I had people from Australia, my brother in Amsterdam, sending me messages going, mate, that's so amazing. You're a genius. You're an social media genius. Where did you get the idea for that? Because it went global. This picture of the guy wearing the parka. Somebody put him on a beach in Hawaii with the waves in the background. Someone else put him in a graveyard. Someone else put him on a mountain in Scotland with deer, and all. It was kind of funny. But anyway, so the main point is girls and boys, clear out your wardrobe, bring it all to me, and we love that idea. We love the idea of swapping your old clothes for something that we've upcycled.
Any other questions? No.
There's one over.
Stuart, I'd like to know, what do you do in your spare time to relax when you're not thinking about all of this?
It makes me laugh because a lot of people. I know I probably sound like I'm hyperactive and.
I'm definitely undiagnosed ADHD, so that's great.
Yeah, but I do switch off. I go, and in the evenings and at the weekends, I love, I spend a lot of time in nature. I used to. I've done interior design as well, so I did all of the interiors for AllSaints and for Reese before. So all that sewing machines and the derelict.
Where'd you get all that many sewing machines from?
Do you want to hear the funny story about that?
There's the one. Isn't there a store with like 100 sewing machines?
Yeah, the first time that happened is basically I went to a factory in India, and then in India they take you to the factory and they have like a glass sort of like, beautiful showroom at the front with everything laid out. It's all immaculate and all that. And then when you go to the loo, you go out and you realise you're in a corridor and you see the factory behind, and it's all a little bit run down. And I came back, I went to the loo and I came back into the showroom and I said, I want to do a tour of the factory. I also wanted to make sure there were no kids working there, or that, that the staff were all being like, properly looked after. But I always like to look around it. So I went into the corridor and the guy came walking out, and again there was all these machines all piled up. They come in a little table, and they were all piled up on top of each other. There was about 150 of these in a corridor, and I went, "What are these?" And he went, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. Please don't look at these. Have a look in this. In fact, I've got all the latest Japanese machines. I've got all of these are all the old ones. This is going to the dump." And I went, "What?" It's like, "We're going to dump them. Some man is coming later." I said, "How much is he paying you for them?" And he goes, "No, I have to pay him." I said, "I'll take them." So I arranged.
How many
there was 150.
Whoa.
And I had my shipper come and pick them up. And the shipper rang me and said, "Stu, it's going to be about 4 containers. If do you really need the tables? Because, it's going to cost about $4,000 a container or something like that to get them to England." And I went, "Well, actually, I don't want the tables. I just want the machines." The original idea was I was going to hang the machine just, without the table outside of the shop, like an old barber shop used to have the red and white striped pole, or tailors would have scissors. I was just going to use that. But I had a shop. I'd just opened the shop in Longacre in Covent Garden, and there was a void where they'd cut to the basement of about a 40, 50-foot wall, and I wanted something to go there. And I thought, do you know what I'll do is I'll just get the scaffolding poles, and I'll make like a presentation, and I'll put all these sewing machines on it. And that was the first one. And when we did it and we opened up, I mean, it was a joke. There was queues around the block of people. It was just about when our Instagram first came out or something, and Facebook, and people were photographing themselves and putting it online in front of like 100 sewing machines. It did look like something from the Tate Modern or whatever. It just looked like nobody had ever seen anything like that in their life. And it just became, but it all started by me finding a load of sewing machines in India in a little factory that were going to go to the dump. And somebody said to me about, where did you get this? It's like the vintage clothes. They go, how could you possibly scale this as a business? Where are you going to get all the clothes from? I'm like, the last thing you've got to worry about in it is where I'm going to get the clothes from. But in India, every single household in India, you might know this, every single your granny or whatever, they've all got a sewing machine. In Scotland, every household in Scotland had an old Singer sewing machine with the little foot pedal and all that. Yeah. My granny, we used in the old days, everybody made clothes, didn't they? So there's
a dying art.
I think Singer was Apple of the Victorian era or whatever. The turn of the century. They probably the most successful business in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
The Singer sewing machine was like an iPhone.
What
16.
golden nuggets would you give to aspiring designers here? I know we've got a few here. Who are fashion designers? I know I'm looking at you. Who are the fashion designers in the house? And I know Jessica.
I know these young ladies over there as well. Hiya. I don't know. It's find a gap in the market. Make sure that you go out at the right price point. We were talking about this earlier, of course, the reason there's a sweet spot that, that you will, if you overprice your goods and you aim it just towards a wealthy clientele, I mean, people are welcome to do that if that's what they want to do. I don't want to do that. I never wanted to sell to really wealthy people, only. There is some people criticize, there's a lot of criticism that comes along whenever you do anything like, they're usually just online trolls or whatever, but they love attacking you for doing somebody, when I first launched this, somebody wrote to me and said, well, I've seen this before, it's nothing new. And I wrote back and I went, yeah, you're 100% right, it is nothing new. We decided to do an ad campaign with nothing new written on it because none of it's new. It's all old and all that. But come and when you get criticism, when you get things like we had some guys last week, we had some vintage military tunics that we put on and they've gone viral with lots of guys telling me that this is a disgrace and I should be ashamed of myself and I'm going to get beaten up by an Irish guard and all that. And I'm looking at these guys and I look at their profiles and they've got 3 followers and they've done 900 posts and it's all memes about where you get cocaine from and, it's just all rubbish. They're idiots, these people. So, you just have to ignore that. But I always turn it into a joke and try and make light of the conversation. And quite often, actually, I had somebody yesterday trolling me online with telling me we've done a T-shirt with a quote on it that we stenciled, a quote that Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, when he first got interviewed by the NME after their first gig, the NME said, well, this isn't music, this is just noise. He goes, mate, we're not into music, we're into chaos. And I just thought that's brilliant for a T-shirt, isn't it? So we did that and we put that out. Somebody wrote, yeah, this is disgusting, you should be ashamed of yourself, we're not into chaos, we're into money, 60 quid for a T-shirt. And I looked and I thought, it's not 60 quid, it's 40 quid. And I looked and I was like, mate, you've just added 20 quid on. I don't mind if you want to pay me 60 quid. And then he came back and then I looked at him. I know people think this is weird. What do I do in my spare time? I look at these people that are trying to troll me and find out whether we have any mutual friends. And I said to him, we have a mutual friend in Fiona Klein, who's a really, really cool friend of mine I've known for 4 years. He went, oh shit, he goes, please don't tell Fiona I've been trolling you. I think it's really funny. What do I do in my spare time? I like having fun. So we just, our number one motto.
He got to the answer in the end.
Our number one motto is life is fun.
And energy is everything.
Yes.
Excellent. Stuart, it's been amazing. Absolute honour. I'm Afzal, I'm done speaking, but the evening's open for you guys to speak to Stuart afterwards. The man with his monster, ladies and gentlemen, Stuart Trevor.
Thank you.